Tom Foster. I'm the editor-at-large of Texas Monthly Magazine as well as Inc. Magazine, and very happy to be here today along with the Texas Business Hall of Fame for the first in a series of Texas Town Halls of National Consequence. Today's episode is Saving Small Business During COVID-19, and we're really pleased to have as our guest Mark Cuban. Mark needs no introduction, but I will say that something you might not know is that later this year in November, Mark's going to be one of the six 2020 inductees into the Texas Business Hall of Fame. That's going to be happening in Dallas later this year. Congrats, Mark.
Well, hopefully it'll be happening, right? Maybe it'll be virtually
well,
like this.
I think it'll happen regardless whether it happens in person. I hope. So, really, thanks for joining us. We had a tremendous response after we announced this and got hundreds and hundreds of questions in advance of the event. So I want to go through some of those, but we're going to be taking questions live on Facebook Live as we go. We'll be getting those as well. Let's start off with just one question from me, which is, you've spent a fair amount of time in the last couple of weeks really focusing on this issue, small business in this pandemic crisis. Can you just start off by talking a little bit about why, you're not a small businessman yourself, why is this issue so important?
Well, obviously with my Shark Tank connection, Friday nights on ABC's, I deal with a lot of small businesses. I see a lot of small businesses. I've invested in hundreds of them. And so while I may not be running a small business necessarily right now, I advise and support and am an investor on more than 150. And so it's near and dear to my heart, if only because I have to help those companies, and the experiences they're having, the advice that I'm giving them also applies to the millions of other small businesses out there.
How is it, just to take it a step further, what is the import of that, for Texas, for the country?
I mean, obviously, small business drives a significant portion of the economy. And so where small business goes, whether it's Texas or anywhere in the country or the world, we all go. And so whatever support we can provide, whatever information, knowledge, direction that I can provide, I think it's a necessity right now because, I've been in that situation where you're terrified. I had a scenario, just to give an example. When I first came to Dallas, I lived 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment, worked at night as a bartender, then got a job selling software, which was great for about 9 months. Then I got fired. And that led me to starting a company called Micro Solutions. And again, I'm still sleeping on the floor, got really nothing going on. And I'm starting this company with literally zero money, and found a customer that fronted me $500. And I promised them that if they fronted me this money, I'd walk their dog, wash their car, whatever it took to make things work. Fast forward 3 years, I've got $84,000 in the bank. There's 3 of us in the company. And one day I get a call from my banker. And he says, "Son, we just had this woman come through the drive-through, and she presented these checks where the payee was whited out and her name was written over top of the whiteout." I'm like, "You didn't cash them, did you?" And he was like, "Of course we did. That's what we do. We're a bank." And this woman literally had stolen $82,000 of $84,000 that we had in the bank, all accounts payable, all to vendors. And so we had to get on the phone. And my first inclination, my first thought was just to be mad as hell, right? But very quickly I realized that wasn't going to do me any good. She's gone. Haven't seen her since. Her name's Renee Hardy, if anybody runs into her. And so we got on the phone with our vendors and started calling and working out deals and telling people from, our landlord all the way through to, the people who sold us paper. And that's similar to what's going on now. All of a sudden, small businesses have just faced this abrupt stop and they don't know what to do. And so working through that, and telling them that the number one thing you have to start to do right now after applying for a PPP loan is communications. And so that foundation is what we've been trying to do with all our Shark Tank and smaller investments, and then working from there.
Yep. Well, so let me go to the first of our viewer questions. Ann Rooney asks, I want to ask you a couple of the sort of more general advice questions, business advice questions to start off, and then we'll get more specific.
Sure.
Ann Rooney asks, what are some of the best examples you have seen related to small businesses, examples of small businesses adapting in light of COVID-19?
It hasn't been that long, even though it seems forever. I think the best thing that I've seen is, well, one, let's start with the loans, right? Because that's the most important for any small business, right? We can talk operationally about a lot of things, but every small business, every single one of you that's been impacted by the virus has got to call their bank. If you haven't already, do it the minute you stop here and talk to them about the Paycheck Protection Program, right? With the Paycheck Protection Program, if you have under 500 employees, you can apply for a loan that pays effectively up to 2.5 times your average payroll over the previous 3 months, excluding any employees that make over $100,000. And they'll give you that 2.5 times payroll and allow you to use 75% of it for payroll and 25% for other expenses, rent, utilities, whatever, broadband, whatever it may be. Now, the good thing about this loan is that if you retain all those employees or go back to your previous employment levels, then in 3 months when it's due, you don't have to pay it back. So it converts from a loan to a grant. So it's not free money because you're paying for it with your taxes, but it's as close as you're going to get for this period of time. And so if you fit that criteria, you have to go and apply. Now, the bad news there is there's so much backlog, so many small businesses are applying for this that it's difficult for banks to process. Be that as it may, you have to stay vigilant and you have to just grind it out and figure out how to work your way through to working with your bank to get that money. So that's rule number one, no matter what, no exceptions. And part two to that is it includes independent contractors. So if you happen to be an independent contracting bartender, right, or electrician, whatever it may be, and you just have no work coming in right now, you also can apply as a small business, or you can apply for unemployment and also be able to get some money coming in as well. So it's not, in the past, SBA related loans or government related loans have been limited to businesses and not 1099 employees. It's changed right about now. So that has to be the first thing you do. Now, beyond that, what comes next? The rules are you have to communicate honestly, and you have to communicate transparently, because everybody is afraid right now. Everybody. And whether you're a founder of a company, an investor, or the CEO or the manager, whatever it may be, you're upset, you're afraid, you're uncertain about what's going on, but so is everybody in your organization. And so is everybody that you buy from, and so is everybody that you sell to. And so communicating with them, just picking up the phone or setting up a Zoom like this, whatever it may be, that has to be something you absolutely do. Because even if you can't talk about your business per se, people just want to know there's some sense of normalcy on the other side of people they're doing business with, that they're trying just like you're trying, that you have the same uncertainties. Those people are wondering about their own job. So it might be a purchasing agent, it might be the IT specialist, it might be someone who buys books, whatever it might be. They're going through the same uncertainty, and you giving them a voice of clarity and honesty and transparency will pay off dividends. They may not place an order while all this is going on, but when it comes time to make a decision, they're going to remember the fact that you were straight up with them. And so will your employees. And to add one more thing to that, we don't know what it's going to look like on the other side. We all may have our own vision. Some of us may not have a vision for it. But some of the best ideas you'll get in terms of what to do next will come from your employees, because they have the closest connection to your customer. They're the ones with the feet on the ground. They're the ones dealing with individuals. It could be someone who sweeps the floors, seeing the flow of customers and what happens. It could be a salesperson. It could be anybody, but the more you communicate and listen, the better ideas you'll receive.
Yep. We had a lot of questions about the payroll protection program. It was probably, no surprise here, the most recurring theme that came up in questions we've gotten so far. There are a lot of questions that people are nervous about it. People are not clear about how it all works. One of the questions that came up numerous times, John Keaton is one of the people who asked this question. He said, what are your thoughts on the payroll protection program for small business and how effective it will be at ensuring dollars get in the quote unquote right hands? That seems to be a concern that people have.
Yeah, so two questions there. My thoughts are, we needed to do it. Is it perfect? No. I mean, there's no perfect solutions right now because everybody's dealing with imperfect information. We don't know how long this will go on. We don't know what the overall economic or social or medical impact is going to be. So instead of ready, aim, fire, this is a ready, fire, aim program. And with that comes inherent problems, but you still have to apply if you're impacted negatively. You still have to go through that process. So that's part one. In terms of getting the money in the right hands, that's kind of a multi-pronged question in that the federal government approved the stimulus program. It's made available to the banks as opposed to going through the SBA, the Small Business Administration. And so will the money get to the banks so they then can give it to small business? Yes. The next question becomes, will the banks give it to small businesses? And that's where the question is right now. It's been about a week since the legislation has been passed. It's been since Monday since banks have kind of opened the door for applications, and it's been a mess. There's no other way to conclude that it's been anything other than a mess. But that doesn't mean it won't resolve itself. I'm fairly confident, I won't say 100%, but let's just say 90% confident that more and more of these loans will be processed and approved. So that's part two. So you got to hold on. And I know that's hard for a lot of small businesses, but however you do it, again, that goes back to communications. Tell your employees the status of the loan, why you need the loan, what's going on with the loan, so they can try to hold on as well, or decide whether they need to be furloughed or apply for unemployment, whatever the case may be. Yep. And you might find out with some of your employees that unemployment is a better solution, but applying for unemployment has had its own set of challenges as well. They're just as backed up because there's tens of millions of people who have applied.
Right.
And then the final prong to that question, once it's approved by the bank and gets to companies, what happens with the money then? By law, it can only go to companies that have been disadvantaged by the virus. So, and that's most companies. And by law, by rule, it has to be 75% of it has to go to employees. Only 25% can go to other costs. And the only way that that loan will be forgiven is if the employer tries to go back and rehire people and retain the existing people. And it can't be used for anybody making over $100,000. And you have to show proof of payroll, right? So all these things. So if the check gets written either to your company or to your boss or to whoever it may be for the company you're involved with, it's going to have to get down to the employees, right? Some way, shape, or form. Yep. And it also can be used for healthcare premiums as well. So if you're worrying about your healthcare and what's going to happen in your insurance, again, communication, transparency, honesty. Talk to your employees or talk to your employer, wherever you are in the chain, and make sure that you let them know where you'd like to see that money go. Because it may well be, if there's a finite amount of money, there's maybe not enough, that you'd rather have it allocated to your healthcare premiums, just depending on the circumstances. But again, communication, transparency, and honesty are key.
Yep. Let me ask you one other question along these lines. This comes from Robert Mendoza, who asks, this was another question that multiple people asked. Does the federal government need to be doing more to support small business during this time? Do you envision further financial legislation to help small business owners recover this year?
So yes, but the biggest challenge, so since we're talking to all entrepreneurs and business people, everybody out there knows writing a business plan is easy. Executing on that business plan is hard. Same applies here. In this type of turmoil, getting the legislation passed was relatively easy. I think getting follow-up legislation passed will also be straightforward and easy. And so where this was $350 billion for the PPP, I think we'll see at least another $250 billion, simply because the numbers don't add up without it. But again, it'll be key on the key will be how banks execute on the distribution of funding. I think there's better ways to do it, but it doesn't matter what I think.
Let me switch gears a little bit. Elkin Velasquez asks, when the pandemic first started in China and they were forced to shut down many cities that in turn shut down many manufacturing plants, the world realized how heavily we rely on overseas manufacturing for our own survival. Do you believe that once we begin to move out of this crisis, that American companies will invest to bring more manufacturing plants into the US?
No, unfortunately. So there's two ways to approach that. One is, do you just manufacture here in the US despite the fact that your costs are higher and hope people will pay more for a product? Or two, do you innovate and create new ways to preempt the old school manufacturing 1.0, and replace it with technology? I don't think companies are going to take the chance that they'll just rebuild their manufacturing the old school way, right? Just recreating plants where there's low cost manufacturing and just bring them here and substitute more expensive people. I just don't see that working, and it hasn't worked. But what I do think is an opportunity, and what I've said to the administration where they've listened to me sometimes, is that for the infrastructure program that's being discussed, we need to do infrastructure 2.0, where rather than investing in just roads and bridges and airports like we would have in the past, we need to invest in technologies that create a foundation and prepare us for the future. And so when it comes to manufacturing, United States is not a leader in robotics. Japan and Germany and China are ahead of us in robotics. And so for infrastructure 2.0, I think we should invest in making the United States a leader in robotic software, a leader in manufacturing for robotics, a leader in computer vision, a leader in battery technology, a leader in developing manual dexterity for robots so they can pick up t-shirts and do all the little things that people do. Now that's not going to happen overnight, but by doing that, if we, I'm a big believer in American exceptionalism, American innovation. By the government investing in these technologies, just like we did going to the moon or discussing going to Mars, whatever it may be, then we can bring manufacturing back. Now, it's not going to look like manufacturing did 2 months ago, right? Where in China, you have you may have some robots, but you have a lot of low-paid, low-wage workers just working through things. It's going to look like mostly robotics and minimal human interface. But before everybody gets freaked out, what good is that? Because it's not going to create jobs. If we're bringing back enough factories, if we're bringing back all factories, because we, in essence, just preempted all the manufacturing that had any human intervention whatsoever. And again, this is not today, it's 5-10 years out. But if we do that, then the aggregate number of jobs will be far greater than the number of manufacturing jobs that we could bring back for old school manufacturing. And the quality and pay for those jobs will be higher. Plus, we have the chance to tax the robots because they're working for less, obviously, and they don't get coffee breaks. We'll have the chance to tax. It could be, I have a company that does robotics, and in essence, they charge by the hour. Whatever they pay a welder in the past, that's what they pay for this welding robot. And charging, an employment fee, a FICA type fee, that may be 1%, maybe 6.2%, whatever it may be, that creates a foundation so that we're more economically prepared going forward. And the jobs to manage, maintain, and repair all those robots pay a lot more than just being an assembly worker on a factory line.
Yep. Let me ask you a question that I was interested that this theme came up multiple times and has come up multiple times in the questions we've gotten from viewers. And this is slightly related to what we were just talking about. Travis Little asks, how should small business leverage AI, artificial intelligence, given the much smaller data sets they work with and have access to versus much larger corporations? And
that's
I think Travis is asking about, especially right now at this moment.
Yeah, that's a great question, Travis. And I'll tell you why. AI is hard. AI is not easy. You hear a lot of people talking about, particularly vendors coming to you saying, we have AI for this, we have AI for that. 99% of them are just spreadsheet algorithms where they just try to do some statistical analysis. The reality is, not only is it tough to put together a data set and to clean that data set, it's even harder to be able to find quality people who understand how to do that. And it's even harder to know whether the results that you get from that, let's say for a machine learning application, are applicable to the problem you're trying to solve. And so all those pieces together, we're really evolving into a nation. We were, and probably will be even more so on the other side of this, where we're in a world of, from a corporate perspective, AI haves and AI have-nots. Companies like Amazon, Google, IBM, Facebook, Netflix, et cetera, they can invest billions of dollars in AI. They can give and have given $1 million signing bonus to AI scientists, and they can try 100 different things and see what works. And they can test things in little examples and see, whether the results are relevant or not. And small businesses can't afford to do that. Even medium-sized, billion-dollar revenue companies can't afford to do that. So my recommendation right now is just like somebody learned in business when the internet happened, the internet seemed hard. You know, I'll even go back when PCs first came out. People used to talk, I'm not a PC person. I don't really get it, right? And then all the old dinosaurs disappeared. And then the internet came along and it was like, oh, web pages are hard, you know, no, you know, HTML, that's like a program, JavaScript, that's tough. And then that wasn't so tough anymore. And now, then we saw mobile computing and cloud computing, and that had its challenges. Now it's AI. Just like you had to learn each of those technologies, at least to a certain extent, and have some expertise, you need to do that now. You know, I didn't go to school for AI, but I take the AI classes on Coursera. I've done the machine learning tutorial on Amazon AWS. You know, the master algorithm, rebooting AI, are books that I've read. These are things you have to educate yourself on. I invested in a company called Node.io, Node.io, my little plug, and they're geared towards helping small businesses use AI as a service to help them make marketing type decisions, and other decisions, you know, subscription, other decisions as well. So there are tools becoming available, but it's a great, 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 great question, because you're going to have to understand AI in terms of your decision making. And when we get on the other side of this, it's going to be used for things that you probably didn't even anticipate. What's the best layout for a restaurant within a 6-foot social distancing environment where non-family, there can't be more than 3 non-family members together? That's an AI problem, or, you know, a statistical problem too, but AI can be used for it. How do you design that restaurant? You know, the same thing for cleanliness. If you have sterilization, sanitization, UV applications, you know, what's the best way? What's the best schedule, you know, and what happens with interruptions, all these things that you otherwise might not expect AI to be applicable to, along with selling. What's your best price point coming out of this? You know, how do you set there's a company called Price Stack that lets you experiment with a lot of different pricing and uses machine learning to figure out what's going to get you the greatest return. So, you know, read up, take the little Coursera classes, they're free. Just do whatever you can to familiarize yourself. And you know what? While we're sitting at home and you know, this is the time to do it. Just sign up for that Introduction to AI or Introduction to Neural Networks Coursera class, and at least familiarize yourself with it. Because the absolute worst part about AI is that everybody is BSing and telling you they have an AI solution. And more often than not, it's some kid with a spreadsheet sitting in the back room. So you got to be careful.
And at this moment, when everybody is looking for efficiencies, you know, investing in trying to get into that and doing it in a way that just ends up being wasteful is the worst thing you can do. However,
Absolutely.
doing it right could really help your business, especially.
Yeah. So when you're guarding every dollar like it's your last one, which everybody is doing right now, and rightfully so, you know, I'm the type where, okay, I'll figure it out. I'll learn it, right? And if I can learn it, y'all can learn it, right? It takes some time, and you got to, like, it's one of those things you might have to read the same text 16 times and underline it 12 times. But you know, if you can do basic algebra, you can at least get there to an understanding.
Yeah. Let me switch gears again. This David, who's watching right now, asks a question that again came up in numerous different ways. David just started a business and says, you know, he's invested in starting this business, but at this moment has no ability to make any money to start paying back the investment he's put in this business. We had numerous questions about this. You know, startups in their infancy at this moment. What do you do?
Yeah. So the bad news is you just started. The good news is you just started. You might not have any customers right now, but taking your business and seeing what it looks like and how you can modify it in what comes after this, right? What in America 2.0, businesses are going to have to adapt to America 2.0. Companies that have to protect their legacy businesses, companies that are big, you know, are already established, it's going to be harder for them to adapt. They're going to just try to see what their legacy businesses are, you know, how much revenue they can bring back. You know, they're not going to immediately look for a way to just revitalize everything in a lot of cases. As a unique startup that just started without any legacy things to protect, you get to evolve your business right now, right this second. And, you know, if you can come up with a vision of America 2.0 that applies to what you're trying to do in your business, and it works and it's something different, it could be the hugest thing ever. Because I really believe in 10 years, we'll look back and there'll be 5, 10, 20, 50 companies that were just amazing, that were created specifically because of the pandemic of 2020.
Yep.
So if you're a startup that just got started, I was talking to a restaurant today, and it was a diner, right? And asked the same question. We're not open yet. We're doing all this remodeling, and we're about, we can open in a couple months and there'll be no customers. I'm not paying any rent, but still I'm stuck. I have these investors. I said, well, you are in a unique position to remodel your restaurant to fit social distancing. What is it? You have to, I don't have the answer what that should look like, but here's your chance to try to figure out what a restaurant, what a diner in America 2.0, at least the first year, is going to look like, and can give people comfort that it's okay to come in and eat at your diner as opposed to somebody else that has back to back to back to back tables, whatever it may be. And it's the same for other businesses. What is it that you can do that's accommodating or really is organic and authentic to America 2.0? Because you have that chance to start from scratch and design specifically and organically for that new world that we're facing, whereas your potential competitors probably can't.
Yeah, fascinating. Let me find the question I was about to ask you. Okay. So another question. This comes from Sam McBride, who asks also about startups. Sam says, what's your view on the long-term impacts of COVID-19 on venture capital and VC-backed, the whole venture capital-backed startup world? Will there be an increased focus on fundamental economics and cash flow going forward?
I hope so, but it won't change. It's VC money, particularly out of the Valley, tends to be, I don't even know the best way to describe it, home run oriented, I'm smarter than you oriented. I think you won't see a decline in money. I think it'll fall into two buckets. It'll fall into vision for America 2.0 bucket number one, where somebody has a grand vision for what life can be like, and they're hoping they can find the next Facebook and the next whatever, because we do live in a new world for all the reasons I just mentioned before. For the last question, if everybody gets to start from scratch, how would you do that business for 2.0? So I think that'll be a big chunk of cash. And then I think you'll see a lot of investments in recapitalization, companies that are trying to pivot, or companies that got hit really hard but have a good fundamental plan. And for those companies, I think they'll be more cash flow driven. Yeah. But if you're taking my money, unless I just think it's the best idea ever and will change the world when we come out of it, kind of the approach I use is, if I look at your idea and immediately 2 seconds later, I say, oh my goodness, why didn't I think of that? I'm really mad at myself. It wasn't my idea. Yeah. Then I'm giving you money for America 2.0. If it's, okay, this is what you do, da, 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 and here's how you have to deal with this and that, then it's cash flow driven.
Yep. Let me ask you a couple tactical questions that have come up.
Sure.
First one, this comes from Kyla King. Kyla asks, how can small businesses quickly build online presence to supplement in-store traffic?
I mean, there's 100 resources online. I mean, Shopify for selling product is always a good resource. That's what most of my Shark Tank companies use. There's a bunch of third-party basic website development templates that are out there. So if you just Google, startup e-commerce website, there's going to be a bunch of choices. But in terms of the back end, Shopify does a really good job.
Great. Let me ask you another one, sort of a tactical question as well. You alluded a little bit to this earlier. Jason Grissom asks, networking and relationships are so important for business development, but all of the traditional mechanisms are on hold. How do we navigate this, especially since cold calling in this time seems somehow inappropriate?
Email, Zoom calls like this, Skyping. I mean, personal connections just are a little bit more distant right now. Yeah. You're not going to get together in someone's office, and you're not going to go out for coffee in the near future. And near future meaning October, November, let's say. I think we'll get to work before then, but I think people will still be hesitant. Yeah. But reaching out to somebody now via email, if you send me an email and there's some logic in there that connects with me, yes, I'm ready to go, because I got plenty of time and I'm looking for new ideas and I'm looking for things to learn. And so if you always remember, selling is not about convincing. Selling is about helping. Always putting yourself in the shoes of the other person and asking, what position are they in and how can I make that better? Can I make them more productive, more profitable, make them feel better about themselves, make them healthier, whatever it may be that connects with your product. I think people now are even more open than they were in the past, because in the past, you knew they were in the office and you had to at least look busy or pretend you're busy. Now you're sitting at home. I haven't worn pants in a month, and so very few people have. And so people I think are going to be a little bit more available and open, also because you have that layer of protection, just the fact that you're not sitting in front or face to face with somebody. So I would sell as usual, but I would use that communications as a way to connect personally. I wouldn't make it about a product. I would make it more about a hi, how are you? What's going on in your life, da, 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 da. I just wanted to connect, let you know, if you don't know the person, here's who we are. Here's how I think we might be able to help you, but no rush. When you come back, I just wanted to be on your radar. And oh, by the way, how are the kids? Are they driving you crazy? Whatever it may be, that personal connection makes a big difference. And just remember, people like nice. If you're nice to people, however you connect with them, people are going to be responsive at some level. And so I just keep on trying. And then the old rule still applies. Every no gets you closer to a yes. It may be an email. It may be trying to set up a call, whatever it may be. But just keep on being nice and keep on connecting, because all it takes is one really good customer when you come out of this, and you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're all so hungry for some human connection right now.
Yes.
That anything helps. Yeah.
Tom, when was the last time you wore pants?
Oh, it's been a while. Yeah, yeah. I'm not shifting the screen down. I'll tell you that. Next question is not specifically about small business, but it's actually relevant to everybody and to all business. Mohammed, who's watching now, says, ask your opinion on, and this is especially relevant to you being in Dallas, where two major airlines are headquartered, your opinion on the travel industry and fate of smaller airlines.
It's going to depend on science, 100% on science. So if we have vaccines, if we have medicine that are great therapies and give us confidence that our worst case is a fever or whatever it may be, then things will come back quickly. And so will big events like going to a Mavericks game. If we don't have the science that gives us comfort, it's going to take a while. Airlines are down 90%. Nobody's getting married.
Yeah.
There are no weddings. If you're in the wedding industry, it's incredibly difficult right now. If not, it's impossible.
There've been some Zoom weddings, haven't there?
What's that?
There've been some Zoom weddings, I believe.
Yeah, I'm sure there have been, right? But hopefully the bride and the groom were not on the other side of it. The Zooms. But yeah, and so we're all, again, I believe in American exceptions. If you look back at the greatest inventions and greatest medicines of the last 50 years, 90% of them come from the United States. Now, a lot of them are immigrants coming to this country and creating those companies, coming to this country and creating those companies like Google, et cetera. But that just tells you what a great platform the United States of America is for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing applies to science and medicine. I'm confident they'll come up with something, like everybody else. I'm hopeful and reading all these stories. But once that hits and once we're confident that that medicine is there, those vaccines are there, then I think we get back to normal pretty quickly.
You talk about America 2.0 numerous times in this conversation. And you referenced just now, NBA games as relevant to how we sit together, on an airplane. We sit together in an arena very close by. We had a lot of questions about that. People wanting to know, what do you think about that? I mean, what do you envision that looking? Do you envision that there's going to be some sort of increased social distancing in the future in in-person entertainment venues? How does that work?
So again, it goes back to the science. If tomorrow there's a pill that says this makes you immune to catching the coronavirus, we're out, right? There'll be some trepidation initially, but then everybody's has so much cabin fever, everybody's just going for it, right? And then there's everything in between. And so it'll depend on what the science of safety says. Once we can get to a point where we feel that people are safe coming in the doors, we'll let them in the doors, but not until then. So there's not going to be, okay, let's play this social distancing game where everybody's 3 seats away from each other. Yeah, that's just, where families get to sit together. I don't see that happening at all. we'll depend on the scientists and the doctors to give us the all clear. And if it means playing in front of an empty arena and just broadcasting on television and streaming it, that's okay too.
Do you imagine that happening sometime in the?
Yeah, I could. Yeah. Again, once the scientists think that we can quarantine a location and make sure that it's sanitized, clear, all clear, and that we can confirm that anybody coming into that location doesn't have the virus or can't transmit it, then we should be able to do that. But I just don't know when that is.
Yeah.
Safety is always going to be first. There's no way on God's green earth I'm putting any of my employees at risk. Period. End of story.
Yep. Number of the questions we got were about sort of like the basketball questions. Were about you. People are interested in you, and people are interested in your Shark Tank companies. Gabe Williams asks, Mark, how have you seen COVID-19 expose weaknesses as well as strengths within your own businesses? And what are you doing now to limit the weaknesses and expand the strengths?
I haven't really seen weaknesses per se, other than business stop. Just the people aren't buying, and people. If you have a company that requires you to walk in the door someplace, or it's a service at an event, those are just full stop for revenue. And then it's really, you find out who the great leaders are in those companies. And going back to the things I talked about, communications, transparency, and honesty, who can live up to that idea and who can't. For my other Shark Tank companies, I've actually had probably 10% of them, their business is just great. I mean, Dude Wipes is an example, right? There's a shortage of toilet paper. They're an alternative to toilet paper. Their business is killing it. Snacklands, Unreal Deli, people, vegetarians, they have an alternative to corned beef, and they're, buying it by the truckloads from unrealdeli.com. And so some businesses have benefited. Others, I had one, that they've had people that are ill or whatever, someone's gotten sick in the company, and you really get to see how caring they are. And that's really where, I've seen their agility and their resilience. And so I don't know that right now, this point in, I can say this is where this one adjustment was made and everything turned the corner, or this is how people did it that was just amazing. But I can tell you that without exception, they've lived up to the ideals that, that I set, that I tried to imbibe in them, which was, the honesty, the transparency, and the communication, and the caring, employees first. And, I know it's not a direct answer to your question, but in this difficult situation, I've really been proud of my Shark Tank companies.
Yep. So staying on the theme of questions about Mark, Lauren Cornell asks, what Netflix series are you watching right now to keep you up?
What do you think? Tiger King. I get on my elliptical and I watch Tiger King. I finished Messiah. First episode's a little bit slow, but then it really picks up. As soon as I finish Tiger King, I'm going to Ozarks, because that just picked up again.
Yeah, I just started that one. That one's great. Another, probably the last one in this thread, Alejandra Garcia Plech asks, what's the best business advice you've ever received?
Everybody's got the will. No, take that back. So a couple things. One, out of college, everybody's got the will to plan. Everybody's got the will to win, but only those with the will to prepare do win. Because when you think about it, no one starts a business without thinking they're going to be successful, but not everybody does the work. Number two is, the one thing in life you can control is effort. Period, end of story. Number three, life is half random. There are certain things like all this that just are out of your control, but there's things that you can control, and what you can't control them.
Yep. Well, this is related to that, I suppose. We got a lot of questions from students and from people who work in education. Zach Stahl was one of these questions. Zach asks, thousands of undergraduate and graduate, MBA, law, etc. students will be graduating in the coming months and will be entering the toughest job market in almost the last 100 years. How should new grads position themselves to find a job? What skills should they add to their tool belt?
So I'll use an MBA analogy. There's only 450 spots in the MBA, and you don't go for the perfect job. You just go for a job. In this job environment, you don't go for the perfect job. You go for a job. You just spent 4, 6, 8 years paying to learn. And this will be your first chance where you get paid to learn. And so even though it's not the ultimate job, going in there, have an open mind to knowing that you're getting paid, but also knowing that you're going to learn a lot. I mean, I got some of my best business experience from companies I got fired from. I learned what not to do in a lot of cases, whether it's, or even when I was 16 and working in a deli, whatever it may be. I've always been a business type person. And so I've always tried to learn. So don't go for the perfect job, go for a job, knowing that a year from now, 2 years from now, that experience will pay off and it'll help you going for your next job. And it'll be okay to go to the next job and then the next job and the next job. That's part one. Part two is we don't know what employment's going to look like when we come out of this in America 2.0. My personal feeling is that big companies will hire fewer people. They're not going to hire everybody back. Small companies will have more opportunities because they'll be more agile and try to be more creative. And so wherever you go, whatever you want to do, you're going to have to be agile. You can't just go in there thinking, it's just a job, I'm going to get paid and I don't have to be flexible. They'll do it my way. No. I mean, there's so much uncertainty when we come back that your best skill is going to be your ability to be agile. And part two to that, the number one thing I look for, and I don't do a lot of hiring anymore, but in existing employees that might get promoted, is do they reduce my stress? So when you go in and look at and do an interview, know that company inside and out. It's not like you don't have time to do the research, and understand the person that's interviewing you and what that position is, even if it's a Zoom interview, even if you're going through a headhunter. And then three, because you understand that, recognize what it's going to take to reduce someone's stress. Hey, and that's what I tell people. Once you get into the job, particularly, what can you do to reduce the stress around you? And if you ever create stress for anybody around you in America 2.0, expect to get fired.
Good answer. This comes from somebody, a viewer right now. This question just came in. Aside from you, they ask, who among business leaders is going above and beyond, in your opinion, in this crisis?
I think there's a lot. I mean, you look at Bank of America, they're not doing great in terms of the PPP loan, but they do have 208,000 employees and they kept every single one of them on the payroll, despite the fact that their locations were closed. Panera Bread did a great job. I mean, this is one of those, why didn't I think of that? Panera Bread, who, is obviously just a dine-in and drive-through restaurant, started selling groceries. They took the products that they used to make their menu and started selling those as grocery items, which I just thought was brilliant, right? I think DoorDash is doing a lot of great things. So pushing to deliver locally. They created a new program that the Mavs have participated in, where when you order through them and they reduce fees, all this other stuff. I don't remember all the exact details, but if you check out DoorDash and Open for Delivery, they're helping local companies improve their businesses by bringing them business and helping them deliver. So those are three examples, but definitely go check out DoorDash because it's something everybody can use, and it's a program we really enjoy supporting.
Cool. Stephen Soroka asks, how will Texas specifically fare, and Texas business, I think he means, fare during COVID-19?
I mean, we'll face the same challenges everybody else does, but the good news about Texas is that we have a really entrepreneurial state. I mean, we're a go, 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 bust your ass, start new companies. If you get knocked down once, get up twice type mentality. And so I think we'll be okay. I'm not going to put timelines on it, but I think there'll be a lot of those new businesses that I think changed the world that I mentioned earlier. I think more than a few of them are going to come from Texas simply because that's our mindset.
Do you, this question comes from William Chittenden. Given the rapid decline in economic activity due to the pandemic, do you believe the recovery will be just as rapid, or will it be slow like the post-financial crisis recovery? Like,
I think it'll be different. I don't think it'll be V-shaped. I don't know that there's a letter, maybe a Chinese character to describe it. I don't think it'll be linear in one way or the other. I think there'll be a lot of things that we didn't expect. I think that we'll be resilient, we'll be agile, as I mentioned earlier, but there's going to be a lot of unique scenarios that we didn't anticipate. And so, no, I don't think it'll just be linear straight up, but I do think we'll bounce our way up. It'd be more like a stair step environment where, you take one step and you sit for a while or stand for a while, look to see what's around you, adapt, take another step, do the same thing. And maybe we even get pushed backwards, like you're carrying stuff up the steps and you think you're ready to go to the next one. It's like, whoa. And then you take a couple steps back because it's heavier than you thought. I think we might go through that. But I think in 5 years from now, 7 years from now, we'll be all right. And that we'll have adjusted. And I think it'll be a lot more technologically driven than we saw. Because remember, 2009, 2008, 2009, 2010, back then we thought it was we were technologically driven, but there was no social media. There was no cloud computing to really any extent. There wasn't AI being implemented to any great extent. And so it'll be different this time because we'll have to be a lot more flexible to whatever we face when we get there.
So related question from Joseph Ramos. Should small business owners expect, or do you think lagged buying and consumer restlessness will create a boom for both small and large business? Is that something they can expect coming out of?
I mean, the pent-up demand?
Yeah.
That's a great question. For some things, yes. I mean, like to get out of the house and go someplace, where you can go, yes, absolutely. And so if you're a food truck, maybe, and you're out there by parks where people can practice social distancing and get out of the house in enough numbers. I'm trying to think what other companies, I invested in a company, Live Nation, for concerts. I don't know when it's going to happen, but people are going to want to get out there and have fun again. I think Vegas is going to boom because the people who don't really care about social distancing, the debauchery is going to be off the charts. Just people trying to get away and have some fun again. So a more direct question is, some businesses, if your business fell back, if you sell something that people still want, but couldn't get to because they couldn't leave the house, then yeah, there'll be pent up demand. But it's going to be different. I don't, the one thing you can't expect is that it'll be the same as before. You are going to have to adapt.
Yeah. Interesting thing that came up in a number of the questions that we've gotten. A number of people really took to something you tweeted on April 2nd. You tweeted the following: a leader doesn't look to criticize. A leader accepts criticism and learns. A leader doesn't look for praise. A leader offers praise. A leader doesn't ask for trust. A leader earns your trust. We all have those who need us to love them again and lead them. Be a leader. That tweet struck a chord, and a lot of people referenced it and asked questions like, what leadership style is best in this moment? And a lot of questions about, as business leaders are trying to figure out how to inspire the troops, how to keep the team motivated. One of these questions from Amanda Moya that I thought was a really interesting one. Amanda asks, how do you keep employee morale and culture up during a crisis like this?
Well, first thing, as a leader, it's your business. And so you have a vision for that company. And you have to communicate what that vision is during this pandemic and what you think it's going to be coming out of it. And one way to keep up morale is to listen. Right? When you ask people what they think or what they think we should be doing now and when we come out of this, or what they think life will be like when we come out of this, they feel good that they're participating. And you might not apply all those ideas, but all it takes is one really good one, and the business can really just take off. Number two is, we're going through enough of a reset where you've got to rethink some priorities as a leader. When I was first getting started, just trying to survive, and that, is effectively what most small businesses go through. I remember every single month, I'm in business 1 month, 2 months, I had $3,000 in the bank, $5,000 in the bank, and everything was about just paying those bills and getting that next dollar. But now you've got to really work from the bottom up. You've got to be able to get with your employees and say, we're all in this together, because there is so much uncertainty. And as the leader, this is my vision, but I can't be certain that it's going to apply. I can't be certain that this is going to work. So I need each and every one of you to contribute in one way or the other. And one way to get them excited is by offering them equity in the company if you haven't already. Every company I've ever started, from Micro Solutions way back when the woman Renee Hardy stole $82,000 from me, to broadcast.com, to everything that I've started, we've given equity. And when I've sold those businesses, I've paid out a lot of money. And those people all benefited, and they knew we were on that mission to grow the company, and either they were going to get paid through dividends or they were going to get paid through an exit. And so by connecting people and giving them that upside and asking them, how to increase that upside, I think that's one way you keep people engaged and also excited. Because if I went from not being an owner of the business to even just being a small owner of the business, okay, I'm going to put in a little bit more thought. And then the other thing I would tell you, and this is just my personal opinion, when I went back and looked through the Mavs employment, non-players, but back office and everything, it came to my attention a few years ago that we had some people that were getting government assistance, yet they were on my payroll as, full-time employees in a couple cases. And it upset me that I wasn't paying them enough, and it upset me more that the government was subsidizing my business and subsidizing my payroll. And so go through your payroll and see if you can find out if any of your employees are on assistance. Not that there's, now is actually not a bad time because of the changes in the stimulus program for them to be there. But when you bring them back, or if you can bring them back, or if you're retaining them, make sure they're making enough and making a living wage. I know it's difficult right now, but make sure there's enough for their families, because if there's not, when you're going to need all their attention, every ounce of their commitment, and they're still worried about paying all their bills, it's going to be tough for them to do the job, because there's so much uncertainty. Just the person at the top may not have all the best answers. And that's completely contrary to the way business has been run for a long time in a lot of cases. But again, we have every business has imperfect information. And so you're going to have to try things you've never done before. This is a different world. This is a complete reset. And one of those things you have to do is really recognize that this is going to be a trickle up economy, that the people that probably are making the least in your company may have the greatest impact on your ability to succeed.
How, in your opinion, should business leaders think about how open should they be with their teams about where they stand in terms of being able to meet payroll moving forward?
Oh, 100%. You've got to be completely transparent.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, business sucks. We went from 100 to 21 or 100 to 0. These are my expenses. Here's what my landlord is telling me in terms of having to pay my rent or letting me delay it for a period of time, and all my expenses here. I just want you to know, because the worst thing you can do, the just most horrific thing you can do is say, oh, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later lay people off.
Yeah.
Because that person could have applied for unemployment, maybe had another job opportunity, but liked this job better. Now is the time to be brutally transparent.
Don't let the fear of spooking your employees prevent you from being open with them.
Because they're already spooked.
Yeah,
They can't be spooked anymore.
Yeah,
this is a unique set of circumstances. There's no way to get them any more spooked, and they already know you're spooked too. There's nobody on this planet right now who's not spooked. I don't care who you are, and so just be honest about it.
Yeah. Just a couple more things, Mark. A question that came up quite a bit. If you have the means, is this a good time to invest?
Yeah, it's always a good time to invest if your horizon's 10 or 20 years. And so I've dipped my toe in a little bit, but not a lot, because I think the market, with all the Fed subsidies and all the Fed announcements, I think it's a little bit too excited right now. We've seen it go up 20-25% over the last few weeks. I think it's getting ahead of itself. And so it's not a bad thing to, whatever your total amount available to invest, let's say it's 100, it's not a bad thing to put in 5% of that now, and 5% every 2 weeks. And that way, if it goes down, you stand to benefit when it bounces back up. And if it continues to go up and just keeps on going up, you're happy go all the way, all the way up. So that's the way I look at it. I wish I had the answer, but nobody can time the market.
Yeah. Nabil Jawad asks an interesting question. You know, we're dealing with this crisis right now in this moment, but of course, the thing about this crisis that has, I think, woken everybody up a little bit is that, oh, this kind of thing can happen, and it can happen to all of us. And if it's happening now, maybe it'll happen again. And so Nabil's question is very simply, how should small business prepare for something like this in the future?
Well, most small businesses live payroll to payroll, right? Live customer to customer. And so it's tough to say, well, put away 20% of cash and just have it there for a rainy day.
Yeah.
You know, the best solution is just crush it, you know, be a great business. That's your best way to protect yourself. If you're small, you're small. You know, if this, you know, just hypothetically, if this would have happened in my first company when I was living 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment, there's nothing I could have done differently. You know, it would have I just had to grind it out and try to make it as big as I could. And along the way, if I'm able to save some money, do it. And then the other thing, I guess, would be gear more towards profits. There's some companies that, oh, I just want to get big fast. And they think the bigger the top line, like going top line is a real accomplishment. It's not. Think in terms of cash flow. You know, like we talk about on Shark Tank, like Kevin says, cash flow. You know, you gotta try to make money sooner, because yeah, when something like this happens, and it doesn't have to be a pandemic. Obviously, it could be a tornado, it could be a hurricane, depending on where you live. You know, it can be any number of natural disasters or other horrific things that happen. Like I said, life is half random. Build your company, make it as strong as you can, and once you get to the point where, you know, you have the ability to save, then you can look at different insurance mechanisms and you can save. And again, if you're the owner of the company and you're putting money in your pocket, you know, it's your personal guarantee anyways, you know, and so effectively the money you save personally is there to protect your business as well.
Yeah, yeah. Last one, Mark. This one, you've probably fielded this question before. This comes from Brandon Karam. Brandon says, is it too late for you to run for president of the United States in 2020?
You know, I don't know. I doubt it. It's a long, long, long shot, but so was a pandemic. And so you never know how things change. And so I won't definitely say no, but you know, the answer is no right now, but everything can always change because so many crazy things have happened. You never say never.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time from Texas Monthly, from the Texas Business Hall of Fame. Really appreciate all your advice and insight, and thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I hope it helped a few people out there. Be safe out there.
Absolutely. You too.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care.